My alien mistress dragged me into her bed, and every night became another sinful war. He arrived at the station with nothing except a small bag and a quiet past. The human man had learned how to disappear in plain sight. He took simple work, followed orders, and kept his head down. No one asked about his history, and he never offered it. That was how he survived. The station was old and vast, floating between systems like a tired animal that refused to die. Many species passed through it, but few stayed long. Power lived in high towers, far from the narrow halls where workers slept. That was where she lived, above everyone, watching, deciding. She was known as a mistress not because of pleasure but because of control. She ruled a section of the station that handled trade, security, and judgment. Her word carried weight. When she entered a room, voices fell silent. Even her own people feared her calm gaze and slow steps. When the human was assigned to her service, he expected to be ignored. He thought he would clean floors, deliver reports, and vanish into the background. But the first time she saw him, she stopped. She studied him longer than needed. Her eyes were sharp, searching, as if she could hear thoughts behind silence. He lowered his gaze but did not bow. That small act caught her attention more than anything else. From that moment his life changed. He was moved from shared quarters to a private wing. The reason was never explained. The room was clean, quiet, and too close to her own chambers. He felt like a guest and a prisoner at the same time. Their first nights were tense. She called him late, always after the station grew quiet. He would stand before her, waiting for orders. Sometimes she asked him questions that had nothing to do with work, where he was born, why he left, why he never raised his voice. He answered simply. He never lied, but he never gave too much. She noticed. One night, after a long silence, she told him to sit. That command changed everything. No servant sat in her presence. He hesitated, then obeyed. The air felt heavy, charged with something neither of them named. That night became the first of many. She did not touch him in ways people would expect. Instead, she pulled him into her private space, into long hours of quiet talks and sharp words. Each night felt like a battle. She pushed. He resisted, not with force but with honesty. She challenged his loyalty. He questioned her cruelty. She demanded obedience. He offered respect instead. It confused her. Power had always worked one way for her. Others broke or bent. He did neither. The more she tried to pull him into her control, the more she felt herself slipping. For him, every night was a struggle. He knew she could end his life with a single order, yet he also saw the cracks behind her strength, the long pauses, the way her voice softened when she thought no one noticed. He told himself he stayed because he had nowhere else to go, but deep inside he knew that was not the full truth. The station whispered about him. Some said he was her favorite, others said he was cursed. He ignored them all. Each night he walked the same path, heart heavy, mind racing. Their talks grew deeper. She spoke of duty, of rising too fast, of losing everyone she once trusted. She never asked for comfort, but her words carried weight. He listened. That was his greatest act of defiance. One evening she stood too close. The space between them disappeared. The room felt smaller. She expected him to step back. He did not. That moment became another silent war. She realized then that dragging him into her world had changed the rules. Control no longer felt simple. Every night became a test of who would bend first. For him, fear slowly mixed with something else, understanding. He saw that her power was also her cage. The first part of their story ends with a quiet truth. Neither of them was winning, and neither wanted th. The nights did not stop. They became longer, heavier, filled with words that carried more weight than silence ever had. The human man no longer counted time by shifts or station lights. He counted it by when she summoned him. Each time he entered her chamber, he felt the same pull in his chest. Fear was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer sharp. It had become deep, mixed with care and something close to loyalty. She noticed the change before he did. Her commands grew fewer. Her questions grew slower. Some nights she spoke first. Other nights she waited for him to speak, as if testing whether he would break the silence on his own. He did. He spoke of Earth, of small places with open skies, of nights where no one watched him, judged him, or waited for him to fail. He did not speak to impress her. He spoke because she listened. That listening became dangerous. On the station, power was built on distance. She had survived by keeping everyone far away. But now someone stood close, not by force but by choice. And she did not know how to push him back without losing something she could not name. The whispers grew louder. Advisors warned her. Rivals watched closely. A human so close to her was a weakness others could use. One night, she dismissed him early. Her voice was cold, sharp, final. He bowed and left without question. But the room felt emptier after he was gone. She did not sleep. The next night she called him again. This time her control slipped. She admitted the truth she had hidden from herself. She was tired. Tired of fighting, of ruling, of standing alone. He did not try to fix her. He did not promise escape. He only said he would stay as long as she allowed it. That answer shook her more than defiance ever had. The war between them changed. It was no longer about dominance. It became about choice. Each night they chose to return. Each night they chose not to end what had begun. Then the station council intervened. They summoned her publicly. Questions were asked. Accusations were wrapped in polite words. Her authority was not removed, but it was challenged. They demanded distance. They demanded order. She listened without emotion. But when she returned to her chamber, her calm shattered. She told him he had to leave. Not because she wanted him gone, but because keeping him would destroy them both. He stood still, absorbing the weight of her words. For the first time, he spoke with firmness. He said he would leave only if she truly wanted him gone. She could not answer. That silence decided everything. The following nights were the hardest. They kept their distance, but the bond did not fade. It grew heavier, like gravity pulling them together even when they tried to resist. When danger came, it came quietly, a political strike. A move meant to weaken her by targeting him. She acted without hesitation. She stood before the council and claimed responsibility for everything. She named him not as a servant, not as a possession, but as a person under her protection. It cost her status. It cost her power. But it saved his life. When it was over, the station felt different, smaller, quieter. She no longer ruled from the highest tower. He no longer walked behind her in silence. They stood side by side, uncertain but free from the war that had defined them. Their nights changed again. They were no longer battles. They were moments of peace earned through struggle. The story ends not with victory but with balance. Two beings who survived power, fear, and choice, and learned that the strongest bond is not built on control, but on staying when leaving would be easier. Life after the fall of power was quieter, but it was not easy. The station no longer bowed when she passed through its halls. Doors still opened, but slower. Voices no longer fell silent. Some people looked at her with respect. Others looked with doubt. She accepted all of it without complaint. The human man stayed close but not hidden. For the first time, he walked beside her without fear. Still, he felt the weight of the station watching them, judging what they had become. They were given a small living space near the lower decks. It was simple, far from the towers of command. The walls were plain. The lights were soft. It felt more real than any place they had lived before. At first, silence filled the room. They had spent so long fighting quiet wars that peace felt strange. Nights no longer carried tension. There were no commands, no tests, no sharp words meant to cut or protect. Some nights they barely spoke. She struggled more than she admitted. Power had been her armor. Without it, she felt exposed. She woke from sleep thinking she had failed everyone who depended on her. Old habits pulled at her, urging her to take control again. He saw it in her eyes. He did not push her to change. He did not tell her who she should be now. He simply stayed steady. He cooked simple meals. He repaired small things around the room. He listened when she spoke and waited when she could not. That patience slowly rebuilt something inside her. The station itself was changing. New leaders rose. Old rules were rewritten. The balance of power shifted in ways no one fully trusted yet. In uncertain times, people looked for stability, even from unexpected places. They began to notice her again, not as a ruler but as someone who understood how systems broke and how people suffered when control was misused. Quiet requests came first. Advice, mediation, help solving disputes before they turned violent. She hesitated. Taking responsibility again felt dangerous, but turning away felt like abandoning something she still cared about. After long thought, she agreed, but only on her terms. No throne, no absolute authority. She would help as a guide, not a master. The human supported her choice, even when it meant risk. He reminded her that strength did not always come from command. Sometimes it came from restraint. Together, they worked long hours again, but differently this time. They walked crowded halls, spoke with workers, traders, and guards. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, people heard honesty instead of fear. Slowly, trust returned. Not everyone accepted it. Some saw her past as unforgivable. Some targeted the human, seeing him as the weakness that had brought her down. One night, while returning from a meeting, they were confronted in a dark corridor. Words turned sharp. Accusations flew. Old anger surfaced. The human stepped forward, calm but firm. He did not threaten. He did not beg. He spoke plainly. He said they had both paid the price for their choices. He said continuing the war would only destroy what little peace remained. The tension broke, not because he was powerful, but because he was sincere. After that night, she understood something important. The war they once fought in private had prepared them for this world. They had learned when to stand firm and when to let go. They had learned how easily control could become cruelty. Their bond deepened not through struggle but through shared work and shared responsibility. On quiet nights they sat together and spoke of the future. Not grand plans, just small hopes, stability, purpose. A place where neither of them had to wear armor. She admitted she was afraid of losing him, not to danger but to time, to change. He admitted he was afraid too, afraid that peace might fade, that old habits might return. They made no promises they could not keep. They chose honesty instead. The station continued to evolve. New challenges came. New conflicts tested their resolve, but they faced them side by side, no longer as mistress and servant, but as equals shaped by experience. The third part of their story closes with a quiet truth. The sinful war that once defined their nights had transformed into something stronger, not control, not rebellion, but a shared path built on choice, patience, and the courage to change. It no longer felt like a place holding its breath under fear. The lights were warmer. The halls were louder, not with orders but with daily life. Traders argued, children ran, workers laughed when they thought no one important was watching. She noticed all of it. The alien woman had changed, but not in the way people expected. She was calmer now, slower to judge, careful with words. When people spoke to her, they did not lower their eyes anymore. They met her gaze, uncertain but hopeful. The human man walked beside her through it all. He was no longer invisible. Some recognized him, some avoided him. He accepted both without complaint. They had built a routine together. Mornings began early. They shared simple meals and quiet plans. Days were filled with meetings, repairs, and long walks through the station's lower levels, where problems were real and close. Nights were no longer battles. They were moments of rest, reflection, and honest talk. Still, peace never lasts without being tested. The warning came quietly, a message from beyond the station. An old power structure, displaced but not destroyed, was moving again. They wanted control back, and they remembered her. They also remembered the human. Fear returned, not sudden but slow and heavy. The station council argued, some wanted to hide, some wanted to fight. Old habits tried to rise again. She felt the pull of her past. Command, force, absolute decisions. For the first time since losing her power, she hesitated. That night, she sat in silence, staring at the wall. The human noticed the tension immediately. He waited until she spoke. She said the war might not be over, that the peace they built could be taken away, that people might get hurt because of her past. He listened, then asked a simple question. What do you want to protect? Not power, not reputation, just protection. The answer came easily. The people, the station, the life they had built together. The next day she stood before the council, not above them but among them. She did not demand obedience. She offered a plan, no secret strikes, no fear tactics, preparation, transparency, unity. Some doubted her, some supported her. But when the human spoke, calm, steady human, others listened. He spoke of shared risk, of standing together instead of hiding behind titles. It was enough. The station prepared quietly. Defenses were reinforced. Trade routes adjusted. Allies contacted. Everyone had a role, no matter how small. When the threat arrived, it found something it did not expect. Not a ruler to overthrow, but a community. The confrontation was tense but brief. The old power realized there was nothing to seize, no single authority to control, no fear to exploit. They withdrew. Afterward, relief spread slowly like dawn after a long night. The station had survived not because of strength alone, but because of change. In the days that followed, something shifted in how people looked at her, not as a fallen ruler, not as a feared mistress, but as someone who had learned. The human noticed it too. He saw how she carried herself, lighter, more certain, not because she had won, but because she had chosen the right fight. One evening they stood near a wide viewport, watching distant stars drift past. The station hummed softly around them. She spoke quietly. She said she once believed control was the only way to survive, that dragging him into her world had been an act of fear disguised as strength. She thanked him, not for staying, but for challenging her without cruelty. He answered just as softly. He said she gave him something too, a reason to stop running. A place where being seen was not a threat. They did not promise forever. They did not speak of destiny. They spoke of tomorrow, work to be done, people to help, a life to live without hiding. The story ends not with a grand victory, but with a quiet certainty. The sinful war that once filled their nights had ended, not in defeat, but in understanding. They had learned that the strongest bonds are not forged in power or fear, but in the courage to change together.